another Street Epistemology review show. I'm here with Will, Janosch, and Michael. How's it going, guys?
Hey, good.
It's going good.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, this is a random video. I just searched Street Epistemology and I found like the top most viewed videos, and we've already done one with the Mormons. I think they're the number one so far, but then this one is like maybe within the top 5, and I added it to our potential, stuff to review this week, and it was chosen. So here we go. We're going to do this one.
What do we think makes this? Why do we think people find this one appealing? That might be fun speculation.
I don't know. It's probably just one of the old, first few videos, and it's just been gaining views over time.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the title sounds kind of interesting. You're asking me to doubt could be one of the factors.
Yeah, it's a good title.
Yeah.
It has at least one exclamation mark in it. And if anybody's ever done any marketing studying, that is basically how marketing works. So there you go.
Yeah, so this is from 2015, one of the first few, SE videos from Anthony. And, we'll try not to be too harsh on Anthony. This is like, very early days of SE. And I'm very interested to see what we might say. Like, how would we do this differently? What do you think?
So is it worth like adding some preamble here? Because like there's definitely, so this is clearly a space where people are preaching and interacting with people right in the local area. It seems like there's lots of people there evangelizing for various positions. And so this gentleman who's engaging in this conversation is one of the people out there evangelizing for his faith with a group. And that sets up an immediate like dynamic, right? This person is here. It's like it's his job right now to represent his position and to hold the line and to push the position. That's the whole reason he's there, and he's surrounded by people that he's brought with him to help him do this. So like he's really in a position where it's going to be very difficult for him to be doxastically open in this moment, right? It's going to be very, very difficult. And I think we're going to see this in this video. But I think that context is really important. That I also want to point out, and you can sort of hear it early on in Anthony's sort of interaction. It's really interesting to notice Anthony's almost going there as well with that chasing the rabbit almost mindset. Like he's here for this conversation and he's really sort of energetic for it. And those are things you can notice in the first like 2 minutes of this video. So,
yeah, this is from 6 years ago. So when Anthony was early in, and I have mixed feelings. Like looking at this video, I have mixed feelings. I have a bit of sadness, a bit of gratefulness, amusement, but we'll get into it a little bit later. If you go by today's standards of what an SE conversation, we might be able to pick nearly everything apart and say that this is not an SE conversation. It's a competition, not a collaboration. And so I feel like it's a little bit unfair, because without these examples, we wouldn't have the good standards that we're sort of, the lessons that we learn from this sort of thing.
100%.
And Anthony's got a whole lot of videos out there like this from the early days that the whole thing has evolved from him putting it on the line and going out and learning. And so I feel really grateful for that, looking at this, that I could just jump into SE and learn from all that experience and sort of do it a better way straight away, if you want to call it that. But at the same time, I feel amused because it's so entertaining. Like it's great to watch. And you read the comments in the video and people love it. So, all right. Anyway.
I think that's the value of it. You can see people know how it feels to have this kind of conversation and to not be able to do proper SE. And they want to argue, they want to give arguments why their interlocutor they think is wrong. And I feel like, that's, I think, the reason why Anthony left it up and didn't take it down from YouTube, because he thinks it's a good learning experience for people to see how to get from this stage to what he does today and what so many people are doing today.
Yeah, that's why I feel grateful.
Yeah.
100%.
It's awesome.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. Here we go.
All right.
You are on the one-way road to hell, and the only way to get off that road is through the blood of Jesus Christ. How you doing, sir? Do you have a question? Okay.
I just got here.
You just got here? Want to try?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, if you have a question, ask.
I don't want to interrupt your preaching.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll wait till you're done.
Huh?
I'll wait till you're done.
Oh, well, I'm done anytime.
Oh, I don't want to interrupt you.
Huh?
I don't want to interrupt you at all.
No, you're fine. What's
cool.
your name?
Anthony. What's
Mine
yours?
is Pastor David.
Pastor David.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Anthony, nice to
Do
meet
you
you.
live here in San Antonio?
No, we're from the Amarillo area, and some of us are from Terrell, and some are from Florida. Brother up there on there he's from Tyler.
Yeah.
And so we're down here on our way down to preach the gospel to the spring breakers at South Hoggy Island. So we stop here. Our team gathers up here. We preach. Then we eat lunch. Then we go.
How long are you going to be here for?
Just a little while.
Okay, that's exciting. And your name is Dave?
David.
David. Okay.
Do you have a question about the Bible or anything?
I don't have a question about the Bible, but what I'm more interested in is why you believe what you believe.
Why do I believe
yes,
what
sir.
I believe?
Yeah, why do you believe it?
Because God changed my life, and I know if he can do that for me, he can do that for you. I used to be...
Yeah.
He already did some rapport building, so that's already there. I feel like the tone is sounds a little more aggressive because it's so loud around there, and they almost have to shout to hear each other. So it sounds more aggressive than it probably is, but I feel it was nice. Okay, rapport building, asking him how long he will be there, etc., where he's from.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think letting him finish what he was doing, like not demanding attention. I think that was really nice. Again, I forgot actually. This another part of this dynamic is like not only is Anthony filming this for his potential YouTube channel content, but also the pastor's being filmed by people presumably for almost the same thing on the other side. So it's been spoken about before, this idea that being filmed can very much set a particular mindset in you when you're having these conversations. If you think you're doing it as a performance, or in part it is a performance, or you're seeing it that way, then it might skew, I guess, how effectively you will be applying the methodology. And that certainly seems to be something that's in play for both participants here.
Yeah, this is it's really challenging to be in an environment like this and have a sort of modern day SE standard type conversation, because one of the shared goals we need to have is we're exploring together, and our conversation partner has to also have the shared goal that they're going to honestly explore and think about the quality of the relationship between the confidence they have and the reasons they have, what they believe. That's not happening at the outset here at all, right? And it's very difficult to get that consent up front in something like this. But what do you think, Reid? Do you think it's not important, or?
There's so much subtext happening here.
Yeah.
And I think it's obvious. He knows what Anthony's doing, and Anthony knows what he's doing. It's obvious. So it's just the subtext is, you don't need to say it. You know what's happening from the get-go. Oh, this guy's annoyed that I'm here preaching. Oh, this guy is probably, if that's the case, then who is he? Does he have any questions? And then it becomes very apparent where Anthony is coming from very soon. So it's just, the consent is there. They're out in public. They know what's happening. So
is it a collaborative mindset, or is it a competitive mindset?
Oh, it's all competitive.
So that's what I'm driving at. That's what I'm driving at. Like, technically, for an SE conversation, should it be a collaborative joint venture?
Yeah, I think actually good SE practice at this point would be, this shouldn't have happened. This is not a good place to have a conversation. It's not a good dynamic under any circumstances. I mean, I think even if the place was quieter and nobody was being filmed, I think even approaching somebody who's out there explicitly to preach might even create enough difficulty. But when you add in all of the additional factors involved in here, this is a conversation that I think, from an SE perspective, probably shouldn't be happening. So it started off on a great foot.
Yeah, I mean, depending on your goals, if your goal is if Anthony had a certain set of goals, and this is trying to meet them with this venue and format, but nowadays our goals are not so much trying to do this,
Yeah, this is challenge rather than exploration. And yeah,
let's keep going.
I used to be a drunkard. I was a fornicator, an adulterer. God got a hold of me and changed my life 180 degrees in the other direction. Changed my heart, which changed my life. That's the greatest miracle of God. I mean, you know, people can say, oh, they want to see the blind see and the deaf hear and all of that, and all that's wonderful. But the greatest miracle of God is a changed heart, which changes a man's life completely, raises him from the dead, spiritually speaking.
So you had an experience in your life, and it changed your understanding of this God?
It opened my eyes and changed my worldview. Yes, it did.
How did you decide to attribute these changes in your life to this specific God, Jesus, that you're
Because
preaching?
I read the Bible, and then I chose to believe. See, here, what most men, the problem with most men is they say, show me, then I'll trust you. But God says, trust me, then I'll show you.
One thing that's happened here is that there's no solid claim being defined, right? So this was something we called out with the Mormon video, that there hasn't been a claim actually articulated that has been defined and reflected. So they're not necessarily sure what they're arguing about, which again comes into play a little later when it starts to go all over the map. There's no confidence established. So, you know, it would have been great to hear if there was, you know, a position where this gentleman was sort of confident enough to go out, but maybe not willing to say 100% certain. You know, that would have been interesting to learn right off the bat. So yeah, it just feels like, yeah, these established steps, and absolutely agree. You know, this is where these established steps become defined somewhat. But yeah, the absence of these at this point in the video immediately is very apparent. And there's this sort of, let's find the thing to argue with sort of dynamic going on.
Yeah. And in a minute, I think you'll see there's this Gish gallop from claim to claim to claim in response to a question. And I think Anthony does a really good job of bringing it back and focusing it back to the question. Like, it's so challenging when someone's just firing away claim, 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 claim in response to a question. So we'll see what that looks like. Anyway.
Yeah. And just to make this frame clear, this is a huge innovation, but from like talking with street preachers this way versus, you know, the usual way of yelling at them, where Anthony started. He even has videos of that, like how he progressed to even get to this point. So that, keep that in mind, I think.
Well, it's amazing. And I'm sort of questioning whether we should be comparing, you know, what's going on here to the current standard for what we think is good SE. It's a bit unfair.
We can't judge Anthony too harshly now.
No, we totally can. We can totally rip him one right here and now.
No, wait. I think it's useful to compare it. It would be unfair to criticize him or condemn this early stage technique. But I think we need to compare it to see what has gotten better, what has progressed.
If he'd been doing this for 6 years and nothing had improved, that would be condemnation. That would be genuine criticism.
Yeah. And I think to the contrary, we probably should be giving him heaps of credit for actually doing this, because we wouldn't be where we are now without this.
He gets too much credit. It's fine.
And for leaving for leaving these kinds of videos up on YouTube and not taking them down, so that we can do this review show, so that people can watch it and see the progression from there to what it is today.
And that's the really tough thing. I mean, God, I don't know. Like, I struggle to watch something I recorded yesterday. You know, the idea that you could look back 6 years ago, especially in these contentious spaces that are, you know, that are difficult to, you know, and challenging, and the fact that these things are here, that is begrudgingly something we would have to give credit for.
Yeah. Oh, and hey, Bob's here. What's up, Bob?
Hey, Bob.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, we're just getting into the video. Let's keep going.
Oh, okay. Great.
Here we go.
Which method would you prefer?
Which method would I prefer?
Would you prefer to, you know, see something first and then believe it, or would you prefer to just believe it when you can't see it?
When I was a sinner, I would have wanted to see it first, then believe it. But as a believer, I'd rather believe it first and then see it.
Do you have to become a believer first before you're comfortable taking the belief over some sort of justification?
You have to, in order to become a believer, you have to have some degree of decision in your mind that you want to change. If you want to change, God will change you.
Okay.
If you want to believe that there is a God. One of the things I always ask atheists is this, is if, you know, like, you've seen the blue pill and the red pill, thing, you know, in the Matrix. Remember that?
I think so, vaguely.
You
I
take-
don't remember which one is
You
which.
take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed tomorrow.
Yeah.
Everything's just as you believe it is.
Okay.
You take the red pill, I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
The Gospel
You have
of
to make
Neo.
a decision at that point. Which
Do what?
This is the Gospel of Neo we're hearing here. Yes, it's such a remarkable thing, isn't it? And it's very similar to some of the things we hear often. It's like you have to believe it before you have justifications. I hear this a lot, and it's difficult to address. I think it gets diffused very quickly in a moment, which I thought in a very masterful way.
I'm sure this may have been, since I'm joining late, but one thing that kind of set me on edge just watching this was just this guy is just a fire hose. It's so tough to get this guy to stop. That's his MO is just he speaks for hours nonstop, and that's kind of, I think Anthony probably had a hard time trying to figure out when to even try to interject. And I don't know if anybody's mentioned this yet. One thing I noticed was that Anthony didn't attempt at all to do confidence scale, and that might have been just he was early on in the process. But yeah, I often wonder with preacher types, and these are important people to SE with, but whether there's value in introducing kind of a 2-level scale of how confident are you that this is true, but also how important is believing this to be true to you. There are 2 separate questions. Quite often with preachers, it's very important that they believe that it's true, but they may never have thought about teasing that out. Anyway, just some thoughts there.
Yeah. Paul has an interesting question. Is there an argument that this early SE is more impactful on the intended audience? What do you mean by intended audience? From like,
This correlates with something we did recently, where I did an SE session that was, I think, actually quite effective, and actually been having some subsequent conversations with my interlocutor that have suggested that it might be, was a productive SE session, but the whole thing was terribly boring. And I think there is a problem that potentially SE is not necessarily a great spectator sport. And perhaps this is entertaining to the extent that it's not good SE.
There's good evidence for that because it is the most viewed SE video. That's why it was chosen. And obviously people love watching it.
yeah,
I believe that there is a place for things like the ethics experience where it's a lot more confrontational and a lot more arguing and debating. I think there is a place for that, but I also believe that there is a lot of value in, there are people joining the Discord server daily, and more people hear about SE and they are fascinated by it. So, and people, when I started watching Anthony's videos, I couldn't stop watching them. I watched one after the other and know a couple of people that had the same experience. So, I think after a while, when it gets repetitive, when you get the gist of it and when you know how it works, maybe it's not that fascinating anymore, and it's more interesting to do it yourself.
Yeah, I think though, this is really interesting. I don't want to go into it too much, but I think one of the problems is this idea of where the conversation is located, right? And proper SE puts the locus of the conversation in your interlocutor, right? The focus of it, the entire purpose of it being there, and the conversation is that the interlocutor takes the moment for self-reflection, and everything should be about that. And there's a danger that in debate is almost the opposite. Debate, it doesn't really matter what the other guy thinks. What matters in a debate is what the audience thinks, what the majority think. And I think in a lot of these X destroys Y type videos on YouTube, you get this same thing where it really doesn't matter what the outcome for the other person is. I think that these early videos, it feels more performative. There's more boom for the buck, as it were. There's more excitement. There's more dynamism in the conversation. But I think as a result, this one especially, I don't think there's any real reflection on the part of the interlocutor. And I think that could be part of it, because ultimately you can't be thinking about the audience if you're really truly thinking about your conversation partner. And I think that might, tends in some cases for sure make for boring videos.
All right, we'll keep going. We'll try to get through this whole 27-minute video. Here we go.
What do you want?
Sure.
Do you want to know the real truth?
Yeah.
Or do you want to continue to believe what you
I want to know the truth.
the truth?
Absolutely.
And then you want to take the red pill. And then so God can show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
How did you know that?
One of the ways I knew is this.
Yeah. Well, can I just ask my question? How did you know to go to this specific God? I know that you need to believe in him in order to know that he's the one.
Great.
Yep.
Just quickly, I thought that was a really good technique where someone's talking over you, and it's really good just to politely say, "Can I finish my sentence? Can I finish my question?" Just to get it out there. So I don't think that's a bad thing. If someone's talking over you, you want it to be a collaboration, not just a one-way thing.
Right. The one thing I noticed with this is that even when he gets a question across, the question is never answered. The aisle just winds up going. Just
jump from one to the next, to the next, to the next. Yeah.
It's interesting though, because I think when you do that, when you stop somebody, or you draw their attention to the fact that they've stopped you, it slightly puts a little bit of pressure on the conversation. Like the tension level just ratchets up like another degree. So I think you have to play those cards very carefully, because otherwise you end up getting to the point where people are just getting frustrated, and communication you're drawing attention to the lack of communication to a certain extent.
Yeah. It's like a check-in. It's like a check-in on the goals. Are we collaborating? Because if we're not, then we end the conversation. So yeah,
checking in is good.
I feel it could have been valuable for Anthony to model the behavior that he wants to see in his interlocutor, not interjecting and then speaking really quickly and get his points across, but taking the time, speaking very, very slowly and thoughtfully and carefully with some pauses. And then maybe the other, like his interlocutor wouldn't feel the pressure that he needs to speak quickly as well, but would take some time to think about their response.
The best example of this in action, I really hate to say this, is Reid's videos. To be honest with you, Reid, you are the grandmaster of sitting there, weathering the storm, as it were, politely waiting for your chance to ask a question. It's a borderline superpower. I don't know how you do it. I can't do it. But yeah, like if you can teach that, I would subscribe to that class.
I guess it's just a personality trait of mine. Like I don't. It's like I can be disagreeable intellectually, but like, with the interpersonal of like interrupting, and that seems to cross it too far sometimes. So it's like that's very funny. Yeah,
it's a good skill for an SE. I think definitely one to practice as much as possible. Just try to weather the storm. Just keep listening and keep trying to be engaged in the conversation. And maybe it's like a muscle that you can practice and build up some resistance. I'm not sure, but if it is, I need to work on it.
I need to get better at interrupting in a better way. But
one question: are you on the inside? Are you just really zen? Are you just completely quiet, or is it building up? And do you feel like you would like to interrupt, but you just don't?
I feel like I would like to interrupt, but it doesn't bother me that much.
Okay.
I'm still following the argument, the train of reasoning. I'll just go until they feel like they want to stop.
I think I've seen one video where Reid drops the F-bomb.
Yeah, if they're not
just reaches across the table and slaps them.
That's better, yeah.
Did you try other gods first and then you just settled on Jesus? How do you know that you found the right one?
Well, I read lots of stuff about it, other religions, the Quran, the Gita, the Hindus and all.
That's a counter-apologetic question.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I came to understand.
Yeah.
I strongly doubt that he has.
And that if you're going to hide something, sometimes the best way to hide something that's in plain sight, that's not hidden, is to camouflage it with a lot of other things that confuse you.
Okay.
In other words, like the government does with misinformation. If a secret gets out there and they can't pull it back, they just make it look like a crazy kook conspiracy theory by deliberately putting out crazy kook conspiracy theories, so that you're just it's just one of those crazy conspiracies.
But how did you just distinguish your belief from one of those other crazy religions that are out there?
Prophecy
in the Bible.
When you read the Bible, now for instance, I know for a fact that Israel exists. On May 15th,
Can we maybe move away from him? Do you mind?
No, it's fine.
I just don't want him to drown out our video.
May 15, 1948, the state of Israel came into existence.
Okay.
So I know that for a fact. Already seen that.
So if I
So
can
I read the Bible in Ezekiel chapter 36 and 37. It says this. It says that Israel would be scattered throughout the world, and their entire city would be plowed under and plowed with salt, and all that happened in 70 AD with the Romans, and they were scattered throughout the world, destroyed as a nation.
Okay.
But
Anybody want to say anything?
I think Anthony's doing a great job of trying to rein in this Gish gallop, and he gets better at it. It's a hard balance to try and get that fine balance between giving them space and then getting them focused back on the question at hand.
To be charitable to the gentleman, he's asking for evidence, and he's saying that there was a claim made in the Bible that, in his view, was made true, and that's why he believes that there's some supernatural component to the stories of the Bible and the truth of it. I mean, he's presenting evidence, and I think it's important not to be dismissive of that. And I think Anthony's doing a good job, as you say, of listening to it. Not easy to listen to, but yeah.
Yeah, he's making a case, it's going along.
then the Bible goes on to say in Ezekiel 37:38 or 36:37, it says that they will be brought back into the land as one nation, not Judah and Israel anymore, but one nation of Israel, and that they will be brought back with their language, their religion, and their culture intact. So on May 15, 1948, that actually happened. So you think, well, okay, so the Bible got one right.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Time and time again, you see them.
No.
Oh, no?
That was the only time in history that's ever happened with any nation.
Okay.
The Word of God predicted a unique event in all of human history,
I wanna
2,500 years in advance.
I want to have a conversation, and I don't want to debate.
There's something in that
completely.
that's probably a lesson worth learning. Oh, yeah. In that he asked him to what he thought, and I think it's always better just to say go on, rather than attempt to assume that you know, even if you're certain, because as was the case there, if Anthony didn't get it right, which in this case he didn't guess what was going to be said next, it makes it feel like the communication's not meeting. Whereas if you just say just go on, you're allowing the other person to speak, and you're not revealing that potential disconnect in mindset and perspective. It's a minor point, but it felt like another ratchet on the slight frustration dynamic of the conversation that could have been avoided just by just saying go on.
And it seems like it's just kind of symptomatic of the general chaotic nature of being out there and all this other stuff going. There's no way. And once this guy starts Gish galloping, Anthony's probably tuning out to a certain extent. He's not really paying because there's kids coming in, and so then he kind of made a wrong answer just because he assumed that he had the right answer, and like you say, it kind of shows the IL that we're not communicating, you're not listening.
When he's just given what he thinks is evidence for prophecy, and maybe one question I would have asked here is something like, what in your mind would count as good quality criteria for a prophecy, and try to flesh that out and take it in that direction. I agree, because he definitely, but then again, he eventually, Anthony, presses him on, do prophecies really matter to you, as far as your belief? And it doesn't seem to be, but I take your point. I think it's important because many folks, we see a lot of videos where we've talked to folks who seem to lean on prophecy, or it's one of the first apologetics they'll bring up, and it is important to define it, see what it means to that person.
I think
good.
Sorry, I think that's one major difference between Street Preacher and other interlocutors, that this guy straight away starts giving an example, while usually people say, well, there are so many prophecies in the Bible that just came true, and you have to ask for an example so that they have to think about one, but he just starts giving one, and Anthony's kind of impatient and doesn't really want to listen to the entire example and starts to get a word in. And I think that's the reason why he answered this rhetorical question. Guess what happened? He says it time and time and happened again, because he was assuming he meant so many prophecies came true. In fact, he said, no, that's one singular event in history that happened. But yeah, I feel like if he had just listened to his example to the end, even though it might be time consuming and a little bit painful to listen to, and then afterwards say, okay, so if I understand it correctly, prophecy is an important reason why you believe this. Is that correct? And then potentially continue with a question like, what are criteria for you to?
Yeah, well said.
And maybe you have to kind of circle back and just, and why is he bringing up prophecy? It seems to me like maybe he's bringing up prophecy to show why Christianity is true and the other religion, he's kind of pissing on the other religions, because we just kind of came out of that, the other religions aren't true, and that never really never drilled down to, how did he determine that the other religions were false? But it seems like rather than making the claim that that his God belief is true because of prophecies, it's more like this is what distinguishes his belief system as being the true one compared to the other belief systems out there.
Right.
The problem with the dynamic here, and this is what Anthony's reining in as we paused, was that if you're not careful, the dynamic becomes a debate. Even if that was never your intention, if you're not careful, you're going to enter into the debate space where it's my facts against your facts, and that's a very dangerous territory. And I think Anthony pulls out of that at this point in the video.
And I feel one last thing. I feel like it could have been a good idea to tell him, I know that you're out here used to preaching. What I am really interested in is your very personal reasons why you came to believe this, because it feels like he's preaching, he's trying to convince people, he's trying to give them reasons,
of course, yeah.
And it's not really about him, his beliefs, his reasons. So
he's working. He's out here working. This is his job, right? He's there to represent this position, and it's not his personal philosophical perspective is going to be very much on the back burner.
Yep, let's keep going.
Be explained in some way, would you still believe in this God?
Yeah, because here's the thing.
So then you don't believe because of prophecy?
Well, no, the prophecy was spoken way.
That was a proto real reason check.
That was very good. Yeah.
Although he said he accused him of it not being a real reason. So instead of asking, ideally you ask.
Right.
Yeah.
In the past that it would happen. It didn't say how it would happen.
Right. But the point.
So the mechanics of how it happened doesn't matter.
I'm with you.
So you can explain the mechanics of it.
Right.
And that doesn't take away from the fact that God said it would happen.
Are you saying that there's no way that your understanding that the prophecies really happened could be demonstrated to not be true? Is it testable?
It's testable because you can look at the documentation in the Bible.
Testable.
And we know that the book of Ezekiel is over 2,000 years old because we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were over 2,000 years old, so we can read those original manuscripts, see the prophecies, and May 15, 1948, it actually happened.
Is there any way to illustrate that they were mistaken in some way? Is this belief falsifiable? Are the prophecies falsifiable in some way?
No.
This gets really confusing at this point. Anthony's trying to falsify a not particularly fleshed out. He's not really understood why the gentleman believes the prophecy was fulfilled. Maybe the simplistic explanation is sufficient, but in any case, I don't know how this becomes falsifiable. Like if this is very difficult. And Anthony holds on to the falsifiability of this claim quite hard, and I don't think it's a useful position to take. It would probably have been quicker to move and more effective just to have moved on. And in fact, the key question was the one we addressed earlier: is the falsifiability is somewhat irrelevant on the basis that it's not the foundational reason that the gentleman believes in his position in any case. So it can be somewhat laid to one side, I think. There's also some nice proto-SE questions in there, which are kind of cool to hear.
Plus, I believe that his interlocutor doesn't really understand what he means by falsifiable. I feel like asking if it was false, hypothetically, not saying that it is, the way that we usually phrase it nowadays. And then would there be a way to show that it was false if it was that makes it a lot clearer, because just asking, is it falsifiable? I think it sounds to his interlocutor, like to the street preacher, like to David, like he's saying, can we show that it's false? Is there evidence that it's false? And he's saying, no, there isn't. It's true.
Yeah.
Supposedly God wrote through men the prophecy in order to give men confidence that the book, everything else in the book is true. So one, in principle, way of falsifying it is asking God directly, is this what you meant? This event in 1948 or May or whatever? Did you mean that event when this passage? Like, that's in principle one way to falsify that specific prophecy.
Yeah. Another way is if he had have fleshed out the criteria for a good prophecy and he started to talk about time. Is there a specific time for this to be fulfilled? And I think he talks about it a little bit later. There is no time. There's no time on this. If there's no time on it, does that mean there's nothing we could observe to show it to be wrong because the time hasn't occurred yet? And there's a practical way of showing that it's not falsifiable, because you can always say it just hasn't happened yet. Just hasn't happened yet. And then he could shift the conversation to, what's the danger in having high confidence in something that you could never show to be wrong? Maybe.
I will keep going.
If something is not falsifiable, David, it's quite likely that it may not necessarily be true, because we can never discover a way to show that they were not true in the first place.
You love your mom?
I do, and I can demonstrate it.
Not really. I mean, you can't demonstrate it to
I
me.
could probably. I think I probably could.
Can you take your love out of your heart and slice it up, put it on a microscope so I can examine it?
No, but I can. We can actually have dinner with her tonight, and you can probably see that. But what I'm hold on a second.
Evidence of it.
He's just touched him on the shoulder.
What?
He's just grabbed him on the shoulder. Like, this is a classic deflection. He's responding with a question to deflect it and go somewhere else. And I was really surprised to see Anthony grab him on the shoulder there. I thought he was going to give him one, but anyway.
Oh man.
Is it officially an SE technique to invite your interlocutor for dinner with your mother? Is that part of the?
That's rapport building.
It's part of rapport.
Standard procedure. Yeah.
I hold a belief in something or a position in something, I accept something, I always want to leave a little bit of my mind open to being shown that I might be mistaken on it, right? If I understand that evolution is true,
Read the New Testament.
I believe it's true. I think it's true. I accept it as true.
Don't say that to these people. I can prove to you it's not.
Okay.
I used to be an evolutionist.
And that would be great. I would be willing to look at that.
Love, not hate.
But you're unable to identify something.
That is the past.
You're unable to identify something that would cause you to revise your position on it. I'm open to revising my position on prophecy and that type. But you're unable to identify something that would cause you to revise your position. That's what it sounds like.
Well, no, I'm willing to revise my position on Scripture if I read other Scripture that, in other words, if I have understood one Scripture wrongly and I revise my belief on it by looking at the Word of God in another area.
Can we maybe move just down a little bit more?
That wow is like,
wow.
That's purely for the YouTube. He knows that's all. I can put myself in Anthony's head there.
Yeah.
I just don't want Jesse to draw me out. So what you're saying is the only thing that you would accept to falsify your position in the Scriptures would be discovering something else in the Bible to falsify your position in the Scriptures?
Well, no, it would.
Is that what you're not saying? That?
What I'm saying, if I read something in the Scriptures, and then I read something that appears to contradict what I believe that one says, then the problem is in my understanding. It's not in the Word of God.
Wow. Is there no way that you can discover that the Scriptures don't function in the way that you think they are?
No.
There's no way you can figure it out?
There's no way that I could. I have been serving God now for almost 13 years, and I have had sufficient proof through what I've seen God do in my life and other people's lives. I have witnessed real miracles that happen in front of me. I have laid hands on people and they have gotten healed and they've given their lives to Christ. They were so freaked out about it. I have seen the power of God at work, and you cannot shake me off of that. no matter what kind of reasoning or what kind of evidence. Because here's the thing, I used to believe with all my heart that evolution was true. But once I started believing in God, I started doubting evolution. Once I doubted evolution, and the further I got into God's Word, God started revealing me to things, the falsities of evolution. But I couldn't see that until I came to God.
I got that.
So you can't see the falsities of the things you believe in the world until you come to God. Now, if you want to know the truth,
no, I understand.
You're going to have to come to God first.
I understand that you've come to God, but it sounds like what you're saying is that there's nothing that you would accept to cause you to revise your position on your belief. And I always get a little nervous when I talk to people that are so locked into a belief that there's nothing that you would accept to change your mind on it.
Do you believe in absolute truth?
I'd have to think about that.
Relative truth, like what's true for you is not necessarily.
Is this going to answer my question about what you would accept to change your position?
Well, do you have TikToks? Is he going to get the Jesus TikToks out? Is that?
It does. It addresses it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, this is another one of those deflecting questions, and Anthony tries to press him on it, but to no avail.
This turned into a train wreck in the past few minutes, real quick.
It's in debate mode now. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, that'd be great.
Do you believe in absolute truth?
Describe it for me, because I've heard various definitions of it.
Something that is true regardless of what anyone else believes or says. That you know inherently that it is true, no matter what anyone else says.
Are you talking about like gravity or something like that?
There was a very specific difference there, right? The first part of that definition, I'm okay with that. That's a good definition of absolute truth. The objective truth, but then the next part where you just know it to be true, that's not objective truth. That is a very different thing. That is an extraordinarily different.
Yeah, I don't know if would it be useful here. He kind of asks him for an example, but I wonder if he kind of was able to slow it down and ask, can you give me your? I'm having a hard time understanding what you're. What you mean by absolute truth. Can you give me your a best example? Of course, he's going to go to rape here, which is a weird turn, but
it's a really I think that was a really telling move on the part of the gentleman, the interlocutor here, where he seems to equate what's ultimately true in the world to what he just knows to be true a priori, what he's assuming a priori to be the case, right? And I think that would have been a really interesting thread to pull on in the conversation. And I don't at all, given the sort of noise surrounding this whole situation, actual and metaphorical, I couldn't blame Anthony for not noticing it, but like that was the really interesting thread.
Here's an interesting comment, and there's a good Janosch, German word. Like when I read this comment, the other part of essay is basically to expose the dishonest part of doxastically closed people. It's related to Schadenfreude. Is that the German word?
Schadenfreude. Yeah.
Like that's the pleasure that's happening in my head when I was watching this video. So that's what makes SE entertaining for, at least a big part of it for people potentially.
Yeah. For a certain demographic of people, which I'm not entirely sure I'm proud to be a part of.
It's kind of related to like play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Like if people are super confident and then they're trying to like explain themselves and they have, I don't know, like that's where my mind goes.
It's a normal part of human nature. Like you watch those funny videos of someone falling off a bike and everyone laughs. It's like a defense mechanism. It's short-term pleasure to relieve the stress of life.
Yeah. One of my favorite Christopher Hitchens retorts that he made sort of off the cuff was at some point, somebody who was in a debate and he said, "You sound like somebody that's never heard any of the arguments against your position." Oh, and I think that's quite a thing to say. But when I encounter somebody who's talking about like this, using this sort of phraseology, I honestly can't understand how they've never had those positions challenged or have heard the obvious retorts here. It seems surprising to me, and I think if when practicing SE, I think it's really important to keep that emotionality in check. Like you don't want to be dismissive in the way that sometimes hearing the same positions repeated again and again by these sort of people holding these kinds of positions, you kind of, it's really important to try to remain attentive and polite and civil and engage in a human way with this person who's seemingly holding these positions. But again, this guy's on the clock. It's his job to be saying this right now. There's no doxastic openness at all, so the chances of really reaching him are next to none, I'd say.
Christopher Hitchens would have been terrible at SE, but then he was the only one who could.
That's fine.
Flaps, so that's
very true.
More than makes up. Yeah.
Anyway,
maybe we should have.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have two branches of SE. One is the modern standard, where we're both collaborating to ask questions they might have been able to think about themselves, help them reflect on that quality of that relationship. And then the other branch of SE should be for the YouTube audience, where people are going out there and just aggressively exposing poor critical thinking. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah,
full contact SE. I like it.
Full contact SE.
It's fine to use SE in these super intense, the pressure's on situations. And if people are just coming at you, you can still use SE. But ideally, you want to be both calm and collaborate together, but not required. Anyway.
Do you believe that rape is always wrong?
I'd really like to not drift onto morals or morality.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
But
because what you're talking about are facts. Facts can change. Because, that wall is a certain color. That's a fact. I can paint it, and it's a different color.
Right.
I just changed the facts.
But we would have new sufficient evidence to cause us to revise our position on it.
Yes, but that's
right?
not truth.
But if
facts bear a relation to the truth.
If you were to say that wall is blue, I have a method for testing your claim. I could simply look at it and discover the color, right? Mm-hmm. But with your belief, we're unable to test it. We're unable to falsify it.
So how do you test evolution? Explain to me how,
this is the whataboutism in full effect here. And yeah, what a remarkable statement. You're just, this is like one of those, you can prove anything with facts. It's just, I don't, it's sort of hilarious, but then again, he was trying to make an appeal to the fact that the only way you can really truly know something was this kind of mystical objective truth, right? This kind of you can see that it's red, but how can you really know? And that how somehow is appealing to some kind of spiritual form of knowing. And this idea of a spiritual form of knowing is something I definitely encounter a lot when I talk to people with a wide range of beliefs, that there is a somehow different way of knowing something which is purely available to people who have chosen to believe it a priori, essentially.
Some things you just know. You simply know to be true.
Yeah.
And have it evolve into a...
Yeah, Michael.
I was just going to say, the Heaven's Gate people, group suicide, they had this spiritual way of knowing, didn't they?
Yeah, this is why the outsider test is always so useful.
Yeah.
Man, you explain to me how you test that.
Well, it doesn't quite work that way.
Well, no, I know how it's supposed to work. I know the theory. I want you to explain to me, I want you to show me, prove to me that an ape can evolve into a man by either letting me observe it in nature or test it in a laboratory.
The question illustrates maybe that you don't quite understand evolution as much.
I do understand.
And I'm not an expert at it.
I'm making a point. My point is this. You believe in evolution, you believe it by faith. Because you can't see it happen. You cannot observe evolution in nature because you cannot watch one kind evolve into another kind. Viruses evolve into other viruses, bacteria into other bacteria, and all this other kind of stuff. And those things are adaptation within species.
Dave, are you using faith as well?
Huh?
Are you using faith?
Yes, I'm using faith.
You are using faith.
I admit it.
I don't know why Anthony called that move there. I don't know why he called the faith position there. But honestly, they don't. I would like as a soundboard. That was just fantastic.
Yeah.
This seems like he's sort of moving into an outsider test here, because his objection against evolution, even though he's misrepresenting, the basis for evolution, but his objection to it is that you can't see anything, so you're just having faith. Yet he's relying on that same process to support his belief in God.
Yeah. So shouldn't the conclusion be we should not believe in God or evolution if faith is an unreliable way to believe things?
Yeah.
So it's like, if he can believe in God and people who don't believe in God believe in evolution, then like we have to believe in one or the other? Like, no, we just believe true things for good reason.
It's always Sorry.
Go ahead, yeah.
I was going to say, it's always so astounding when religious people call you out on, for example, believing in evolution and saying, "Ha, you are only using faith, just like me. You're using an unreliable way of knowing something. Ha, gotcha." And somehow they feel like that's a good point. That's a good argument to believe in their God.
This is really critical because the person that wants to claim that they have access to objective truth, like how and the idea that anybody sufficiently rational will say, I only really have access to my subjective view of truth, right? Like I can't claim omniscience and omnipotence, but this gentleman apparently can, and therefore he wins the debate because he has access to universal truth in some way that no other human is going to have. It's a very, very strange move, but it's a move that we see a lot. One thing I want to point out, though, is that the energy in this conversation is escalating. You can feel it. Both of them are answering more quickly and more aggressively, and it's a real red flag to try to either end the conversation soon or to take a step back and try to deliberately slow it down by mirroring the behavior you want to see.
You can see it in the body language. And this guy just really pointedly pointed at Anthony, and he's gesticulating and that sort of thing. So he's definitely getting energized.
The cadence of the back
clearly evolution is one of his favorite apologetics.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge the idea that this is a bad thing. I'm changing my view. I think that maybe I'm going to test this. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do collaborative SE videos, and I'm also going to do combat SE videos, and I'm going to test to see which ones get the better ratings.
Okay.
Argumentum ad baculum version of SE.
Combat SE. Let's create a new branch. Combat SE. Yeah.
But, you are trading off potentially entertainment versus impact to get towards the goal of helping people become better critical thinkers.
The argument for the debate format is that obviously the message in theory can be more effective because it reaches more people. But I actually think that the power of SE is in the individual conversation, and I don't think that's a weapon of mass conversion. I don't think it's a tool that can be wielded in that way particularly effective. Well, I mean, you say that, but I mean, Anthony's videos have only gotten better and his audience has only grown. So I don't think it's necessarily true that this combative form is the only valid form.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this case, this guy's got such a high level of motivated reasoning. Everything's on the line for him, right? So there's practically zero chance that he's going to listen and self-reflect and be open, right? But the people watching it are more neutral. And there might be people on the balance thinking about these things. And when they look at this and they just see the circular reasoning and, maybe there is a better impact for those individuals watching it than there is for this gentleman.
Yeah.
I'd like to hope so, but I'm slightly doubtful. I mean, I'd like to hope so, but I'm sure, because here's the thing, that they're filming this for the interlocutors, content, right? So they're out there filming this conversation, and I think that this is kind of, I think anybody watching this believing, in the opposing position here, because at this point it's kind of a debate. It's kind of not SE. Anybody holding the opposing position, I don't think they are. I think they're going to see this as a victory for their side, and I just think that's the problem with debates, right? People go in holding the same position pretty much that they went in with.
Yeah.
What about people?
It's really even a debate here. This is truly like this guy's just preaching. He's preaching to what he suspects is an atheist, and the atheist is not really even counterpunching. And so, like you said, it would appear that he's winning the preaching.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a quick question: if we have someone that's watching that's on the fence, so they're not committed either way, and we have two styles. We have this combative style here, or if Anthony was to switch it up and he was have, the modern day strictly collaborative SE, which one would have better impact in your view on the person who's on the fence watching?
I think the modern day SE is much more effective at generating genuine aporia. I really do. Like, I think when it's, all of the kind of standard issue talking point deployment stuff, it gets tiresome, and you've heard it from your side enough. You're just going to be unpersuaded about it. But a question that genuinely takes you a moment to think about, that makes you go, that moment of aporia that we talk about quite a lot, that is it. That's it. That's the only thing that SE is looking to do, is generate that moment of reflection. And I think that's the only thing that changes minds. I don't think you can be persuaded by the showboatery or the kind of, oh, that guy looked like he lost the debate. Like, I just don't think it's as effective. And I think, I would say,
I think what if Anthony had said, like, as Reid proposed, well, shouldn't we just scrap evolution and God belief if we're using the same method? Yeah, that may have actually found, I don't know if it would have caused this preacher's used to hearing a response or no response, and I don't think he would have been prepared for that kind of a question.
I would imagine he'd say something like, but I do have evidence. Like, I've seen the miracles, I have the prophecies, so I don't have to rely on just faith like you do with evolution. I would expect something like that.
Okay, all right, let's keep going.
But I believe because I understand enough about God that I can trust what he says even if I can't see it or understand it.
Is that your definition of faith? Believing in something that you can't see?
That you can't see. I can't see God physically, so I believe he's there. That's faith. You can't see evolution physically, but you believe it's true. That's faith.
I accept it. I don't believe it.
You believe it because
I accept it to be true.
You accept it to be true, then you believe it.
But I am willing to revise my position on it if I see something. But you're not able to do that, it sounds like.
You believe?
Is that because it's faith? Are you? Let me ask you this: if you're using faith to conclude that God is real and the scriptures are real and that type of stuff, are you saying that because you're using faith, it's not testable?
Hey, babe. Oh, babe, that's my wife over there. By the way, so science, the definition of science, the basic definition, is the study of the natural world through observation and experimentation. Right? I can observe the power of God.
Oh.
I can observe the power of God by seeing the miracles, that he's done. I have seen people cured of cancer. I've seen people healed of all kinds of terrible things. I've laid hands on people and seen it happen myself.
That's incredible.
My wife prayed and a man got raised from the dead.
Wow.
Literally, it happened. The man had been dead an hour and a half. He got raised from the dead.
That's
15
incredible.
days later, he walked out of the hospital without even brain damage.
Wow.
Amazing.
That is amazing.
Now, that's observable.
Okay.
And I can test it because I can pray and I can read the Bible and say, God, I believe that by faith. That's my test of you, and it comes true. And guess what? It's testable.
Because if it didn't come true, you'd be able to say that the prayer didn't work?
Well,
is that the testable part of it?
I have to pray the way God tells me to pray.
Okay.
If I ask for something correctly, then it always comes true.
If you,
It's very, this is obviously going to get into the prayer part, which is really worth listening to, but oh my God, I mean, it's very difficult to address those kinds of personal testimonies without making the entire that would have been a great claim to start with, like at the beginning. Like, what's your confidence that this person was brought back from the dead? Like, how have you evaluated this to be? What a video that would be. Man claims man comes back from dead after an hour and a half of being passed, and that's remarkable a thing. And sometimes you get these personal testimonies that just blow you out of the water like this. I just want to point out one final thing. There was a marvelous moment where the gentleman says, "That's my wife over there," and Reid triggered the thing at the bottom that said "ask for confirmation."
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Correctly, then it always comes true.
If you,
it always happens.
Wow.
Because Jesus said, if you ask anything in my name, I will do it for you.
Is there something can we pray to end cancer in kids?
That's a great claim to probe the limits about.
Right now. And if you pray exactly the way that he wants you to pray, can we end it right now? Is it possible?
I don't think it's God's will to do it.
How would we be able to test it, though, if it worked or not?
Well, if it's God's will for everybody to be cured of cancer,
yes. If you prayed for it,
then it would already probably have happened. It's not God's will. Why would you think it'd be God's will for everyone to get cured of cancer?
Are you saying that there are some things that you can pray for and some things that you shouldn't pray for?
Because he's all loving. Because he's all loving. That's why he would want to end cancer.
This is really making him think, though. This is the first time in the video where he seems to be a little bit having to think on the fly. And Anthony's really good here. Like it's It's a great question, and it's kind of put him on the back foot. And now he has to say either some terrible things about God, which is apparently the route he's going down, or he has to acknowledge that this is not maybe all of that reliable a report, but this gets into some great stuff. So yeah.
Okay, let's say you take an unsaved...
I'm a little confused.
You take an unsaved person.
What?
An unsaved person.
Unsaved? Okay.
Unsaved. They are bound for hell. They're under the curse of the law of sin and death. Cancer is one of those mechanisms of death. In the flesh, my flesh is still condemned to die. When I get born again, I get born in the spirit, and when I go to heaven, I get a new spiritual body.
Let's make this a little bit more general then.
So I'm not going to get necessarily cured of cancer. God doesn't necessarily want me to. He might have something for me to learn out of that I need to learn, because he cares more about my eternity than he does about my temporal suffering in the world.
Is that your way of telling me that there are some things that you can't pray for because they won't come true because God just wants it that way?
I can pray for an individual, and if I do it right, and I do it according to God's will, he always grants it.
Wow.
Now,
so that does sound testable.
It is testable.
Okay.
It is testable.
Can I get your contact information? Because maybe we can set something up.
Yeah. You got a pen?
Like the next time you pray for something? I do not. Would you maybe give me your email address or something?
Yeah. It's Pastor David at...
I got that on camera, so that's good.
One thing that happens here is
really
that since he asks him for the contact details, interestingly, I think it diffuses the energy a little bit. Like you notice in this next bit, he then starts to reflect on like the mechanics of the prayer mechanism in a slightly more relaxed way, which sort of is very revealing. But I thought that was really interesting to notice the energy change in the next bit.
Because if it could be illustrated that the prayer is working, or if something doesn't go right with the prayer, like it's testable in some way, that would definitely be interesting.
It depends on God's will. The Bible says the effective, fervent prayers of a righteous man availeth much. So there's qualifications for God granting prayers.
So if you prayed for something and it didn't happen the way that you thought it would,
then it may be because of me, not because of him. I'm not saying I always do it right. I'm saying if I do it according to his will, then it'll always happen. But if I don't do it right, it doesn't happen. If it's not God's will, it won't happen.
It almost sounds like you set up a situation where if you were to pray very sincerely and that type of thing, and the prayer came true, you would say God helped. But if you prayed sincerely and did all that stuff and it didn't happen, you have an excuse.
Well, it might sound like an excuse, but it's because God is infallible and I'm fallible. And so I'm capable of making mistakes.
Okay.
And so if I make mistakes, God's not necessarily going to, Adam and Eve sinned, they got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. God doesn't bless anything that's involving sin. He doesn't bless anything that's not his will.
That was such a great chance at asking, like, how do we find out if you, is it always like this claim? If it doesn't come true, then that's proof that I didn't pray right. But if I pray right, it always comes true.
Well, yeah, but that's not even his claim. Like this is the perfect place to do that falsifiability thing, because this is exactly the absolute absence of falsifiability. If he prays correctly and it happens to also be God's will, it happens. If he prays correctly and it isn't God's will, it doesn't. If he doesn't pray correctly, so presumably, if he doesn't pray correctly, but it was God's will, does it then happen? Like it's the matrix of how this works is very complex, and it seems to be weird that him praying would be a factor in any case if God willed it. But the truth is, it's of course not falsifiable. All he's really saying is sometimes when he prays, he thinks it's being answered. And sometimes
would
it
be
isn't.
worth proposing instead of, because he's kind of asking, Anthony's kind of asking the open-ended question: how would you test it? What if you say, instead of your next stop being the Spring Breakers down in wherever, let's go to St. Jude, to the children's cancer ward, and I don't know, could we put it to the test there? That'd be kind of combat style, but a much more concrete test.
Yeah, have to give the pastor an A+ for circular reasoning. and you know, the insidious bit about it is that the failure of the test is really put back on the problem with the person doing the test. It's like it's you're the problem, you're the reason why the test didn't work. You know, there's some shame or guilt that's built into this circular reasoning, so it's like doubly insidious.
Are you guys familiar with with Skinner's experiments with pigeons?
Yeah.
That's exactly the same thing, and it blows my mind that in this respect, humans fall for the same fallacy as these pigeons. They believe if I only move my head the right way, I will get food, and it didn't work this time, so maybe I have to do it slightly different. Oh, look, after the 15th attempt, I got some food. That's the way you do it.
This is going to be an ungenerous question, but is it possible that this gentleman doesn't actually believe that prayer works, but feels that it's necessary to represent that view, or useful to him to represent that view?
That's the two competence questions. Yeah. You know, is it really true, or is it how important is it for you to believe that this is true? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because it seems like, you know, this is pretty important for him to believe to be true, and even in his own explanation, he cannot, the cognitive dissonance that his previous statements have just, no doubt, either he wasn't listening to what he said, or he must have noticed that. It would have been very difficult not to hear it.
Because he's not trying to accomplish anyone else's will. He's trying to accomplish his will. So he only grants things based upon his will because it's part of his plan. It's got to be, when you pray, you have to be in line with God's authority. You have to be walking in righteousness with God, and you have to pray fervently and ask something that's in God's will that he wants to do.
Okay.
And then that comes true. And if any of those things are not lined up, then it doesn't come true. And it's usually because people pray for things that God doesn't want.
So if I have to kind of get going, but if I can maybe summarize, if prophecy were to suddenly become not true or discovered not to be true, you still believe?
Well, how can a prophecy be discovered not to be true?
I don't want to revisit that, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if he makes a statement and then it comes true, that prophecy got fulfilled. The only way it's not fulfilled is if he makes a statement and it never happens. But God doesn't set a timetable necessarily on all these things.
So there's no way to falsify that as well. There's no way to falsify Scripture, and there's no way to falsify the prayer. Yet you're still willing to believe it. To the point where you're out here, you know, standing out, handing out pamphlets and dedicating a good part of your weekend to it.
If you're wanting to falsify something, then you're more interested in disproving it than...
Not necessarily. Well, I want to believe true things. Don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So, in order for me to discover something's true, I need to have a way to figure out that it might not be true.
First of all, you have to establish a rock-solid standard for that truth and compare whatever it is you believe to that standard. If you don't have a standard for truth, you will never discover it. Never. Because, see, if you don't believe that rape is always wrong, eventually you might...
Yeah, this is the fundamentalist principle right here.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with this. Anthony almost sounded slightly defensive about the accusation that he's looking to falsify everything. Like that's exactly the right way to be. And if you can't falsify it, then you've got good reasons, presumably to presently believe it, right? As you've not proven it to be true, you've just not been able to falsify it, and that gives you good grounds to treat it as if it's true.
David didn't even listen to that. He didn't even process what Anthony was saying. So
no, very true.
Yeah, this is the distinction between the pre-modern conception of truth, which is like, stick it on something like a god to really firmly ground it and just hope that thing is the case. Or just whatever. But then the modern version is, like with science, fallibilism, whatever we think is true is provisional always, and whatever is just left over from criticizing it, we just go with that provisionally. It's a very different conception, but it's also, something we can be confident about, so.
If it was in a different setting, it would have been a good point maybe to go on and have a meta conversation about, do we really need a rock solid standard for truth, right? Can we rely on what seems to give us practical results to help us to act on our desires, encourage flourishing? We could have shifted it there, but obviously this is not the right spot for it.
It's nice to notice there are quite a few questions that I'm pretty sure modern day Anthony would have presented at different points in this conversation that I think would have elicited exactly those kinds of reflections. And you know, I think it would be fascinating to hear modern day Anthony have this conversation. You know, I think it would have been really a different thing entirely. But I still think with all the difficulties of this gentleman's, you know, representing his position and you know, being out there on the job, as it were, I think it still would have been a difficult one. But I think Anthony would have been more effective, modern day version.
I thought it was interesting that prophecy, of course, popped back up here, and he seemed to define. He seemed to say, how can it be a prophecy if it doesn't come true? Yeah, and so it's, it's just kind of a weird. Could you come up with an example of a prophecy that doesn't come true, or that if it doesn't come true, then it's not a prophecy apparently in this guy's mind?
Did Anthony have any? Did Anthony have any more conversations with this guy?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. But yeah, this is in the channel, Nathan. And this is number 22. They're talking about. Yeah. Here we go.
Rape somebody.
You're kind of getting morality.
Well, no, morality is true. See, that's really the real issue here, because whether or not we all get along as people or whether we're shooting each other in the streets has a lot to do with morality. I'm more concerned about whether or not we shoot each other in the streets than I am about whether or not we believe in some botanical principle about plants. Okay, I'm more interested in making sure that people live at peace in the world. And the only way to do that is to establish a standard of truth by which we all live by. And if we do that, then we can all exist on the planet peacefully.
Yes, sir. And
right?
you believe that
that's a clear, reason there that we could talk about. That's great.
that standard is the book.
It's the Bible.
Which you can't identify something that might cause you to change your position on.
What you're asking me to do is doubt, and I don't doubt.
You don't doubt?
You're saying, well, I just don't know that I can believe in anything in which I don't have any doubt. Do you not?
Yeah.
Do you believe you love your mother?
I
Can
do
we
believe
falsify that? I mean,
yes,
do you
probably.
doubt it? Is there any time you doubt that you love your mother? Or are you firmly convinced you love your mother?
I'm convinced I love her because of my past experience.
There you
right?
go.
But I think anyone observing that behavior over a certain number of years, I don't know how it would be done, video cameras or whatever, might be able to point to things that might say that I don't, right?
But do you doubt that you love your mother? Do you doubt that?
No.
Well,
There's
then,
also proportioning the evidence to the size of the claim, right? Like this is a real trap. It's the evidence required to you that your mother loves you is probably over a period of time diminished, right? You don't need to be perpetually, have that made present to you. This is not the same kind of claim that this gentleman is making, and it's totally a false equivalency.
Well, this is definitely a fundamental difference in worldview. When he's very, I don't doubt, and that I think that's where you have to ask, can you think of it? Can you think of an example of a time when you did doubt? And that's really important because he kind of says this as a blanket statement, and then he kind of goes on the offensive and starts asking Anthony questions. Whereas I think it'd be much better for him to really think about that statement, because to say I don't doubt, that's pretty bold and probably worth probing.
Has any mother in history ever stopped loving their child? Could that be you?
I think he was asking the question, like, do you doubt that you love your mother? And he's talking about a particular instance, right? It's an emotion, an experience. It's a singular observation. It's not some universal judgment about the external world. It's just describing your experience. I have this emotion. I have memories of this emotion. It's a false equivalency because it's not really about that. It's more about the question of, is my mother real? Is God real? I have a plethora of background experience to show me that my mother's real and that I'm not deluded about it, right? I have every single person I've ever interacted with in my subjective experience confirming to me that my mother is, it stood up to falsification more than anything. So it's, and this is the problem where if you do, one of the benefits of SE is to keep it focused with one person asking questions, and we get permission from that, because then we don't get sidetracked with these little false equivalencies that make us lose our train of thought, and it just doesn't do the quality of the conversation any service.
Right, and so someone who like this apologist is used to going to love. How do you know love is real? Can you slice it up? Those are just really common, and it puts the the whole point of it is to put the other person on the back heel, because no one wants to say, oh yeah, I don't know if my mother loves me. It's just like I said, it was a trap.
This is the advantage, from the theist perspective, is of course they're willing to claim absolutes, and that's just not a move that other people can make unless you have something like that. You have a religious position, and Anthony can't make it, and of course, when people feel very emotionally about moral issues, they want them to be morally true. We're going to get into the moral weeds in a moment, but like people have this sense that it must be just true somehow in some way, that we can't do morally objectionable things, and that there is something morally wrong. We have that intuition, but there's nothing actually empirically objectively true about anything that's morally asserted. It's just a collectively shared opinion as much as anything else. But this idea that that's not satisfying, and there must be objectively morally true things about the world, and objectively true things, and the only way to know those is through religion, and that gives religion a high position.
Yeah, that's why I think really going back to that doubt part, the fact because that for us, doubting is really important, and I can give a number of examples of times when I've doubted in the past, and that has been to my benefit. I couldn't navigate life without doubting. And so I think really, that was an important part of the conversation that should have been focused on. Could have camped out there for quite a while just to press him a little bit and say, is that really true?
And at this point, it could have been a great point to end the conversation and say, oh, that's really interesting. When you say you don't doubt, could we maybe have another conversation about that specifically? And maybe until then, you think about, maybe you can try and think of situations where you have had doubt, and then we can talk about that in our next conversation.
Presumably, he was a non-Christian before he was a Christian, so he must have doubted his non-Christianity at the very least.
He said he doubted evolution, right?
He doubted evolution. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's finish this up.
To revise my position on it.
You want to revise your position on loving your mom?
I mean, I do. There's no question that I love her.
Can she do anything in this world that would make you not love her?
Of course.
Like what?
Of course. Let's say she shot one of my brothers.
Okay, that makes you not love her?
That might cause me to revise my position on it. But it sounds like, again, if we can go back to you, and maybe you can think about this. If you're holding on to a belief because you strongly believe that it's true, but you don't have a way of figuring out that it might not be true, I might just ask you to reconsider the amount of weight that you're putting on the belief. If you could just think about that on the rest of your trip.
What about the weight you're putting on your belief of loving your mother? What about the weight? I mean, that's a pretty heavy weight.
It is for me.
It is.
But not for the rest of the population or for my eternal salvation.
But I love my mom too. And actually here, see, you said your mom could do something, like maybe shoot your brother. It might cause you to revise your position on loving your mom.
Yes.
You know what? That won't happen with God. You could murder somebody and that won't revise his position about whether or not he loves you.
I know
it won't change.
Yeah, I understand that
he still loves you. He hates what you did, but he still loves you.
I know that you really believe this.
Oh, I do.
I know that you do.
Absolutely do.
I know that you do.
Absolutely do.
But I want to believe things that are true. And you do too, it sounds like.
Yeah, I do.
Right.
But I have found the truth. See, here's the thing. You can stand in front of a bunch of people and say, I'm a seeker of the truth, and they'll all applaud you. And you say, and I found it, and they'll go, you're an idiot, you're a liar, there's no way you found that. What is the point of saying you're a seeker of the truth if you don't really believe you can ever find it?
I'm sorry,
What is the point of saying you're a seeker of the truth if you don't say you ever found it? If it's not findable.
Oh, okay.
If it's not findable,
no.
What's the point of saying you're even seeking?
Like, I'm pretty certain that evolution is a fact. I've used it before.
I'm
But-
absolutely certain it's not.
Okay, but see, that's where we're different. Is it sounds like I'm open to accepting something that might cause me to change my position on my understanding of it. You're not open to changing your position, or even identifying what you would accept to change your position on your belief in this specific God.
See, you're asking me to believe. See, you're asking me to reconsider my position. Is what you're asking.
Sure.
What you're asking.
That's fair. Yeah,
I'm asking you to reconsider your position based on the standard you've applied to
I
me.
absolutely will.
So, observe evolution in process, or test it
Okay.
in the laboratory, or throw it out because it's not science. It's
Here's the thing:
philosophy.
if evolution was discovered on Monday to be not true,
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It's provable it's not true.
What?
Oh, just this flagrant denial of evolution in the most. It's not even a cliche at this point. It's kind of, it's the classic line. It's very good.
Oh, hey, speak of the devil.
Hey, abstract as an appeared. Hey,
I figured I'd show up late. Why not?
you missed a fantastic new logical fallacy, or fallacious argument, which is the argument from loving your mum. It was quite an interesting. It's a new one I've not heard from.
I just saw so many survey statements show up. I had it just was calling me. It was like Beetlejuice,
I had to
Beetlejuice,
channel
Beetlejuice.
you, yeah.
Here I am.
There you go.
Enough survey statements and I'll appear.
Yeah, let's finish this up.
This is a
You
good
can't
What?
Oh, I was just saying this is a good one. I listened to it yesterday.
Yeah.
observe it. You can't test it in the lab. You can't test it in the laboratory. You can't observe
just
it.
one last. If evolution was shown to be not true, and let's say yeah, you're right. Maybe it's not true. It still wouldn't bolster my confidence that the belief in Jesus Christ or Buddha or Allah or Zeus or whatever wouldn't be any more true the day that was discovered for me.
What would be the standard of proof that you would require that God exists?
I would need the God to come into my life, and there's a couple things that I can think of, like doing something with sand and stacking them up and flying me through all the sand so I can see every little grain. Something really incredible that it would be very, very difficult for some other being to probably do. Right? I might still doubt a little bit, but I think that God would know what it would take to convince me of it. I probably wouldn't even have to verbalize it.
When you first get saved, you still have some doubt, and God works that out of you. See, I'm at a point in my walk with God that the doubt's gone. I don't have any doubt. I really don't. And I know a lot of people look at me, oh, well, how in the world could you have no doubt? That's the way they look at me. But it's true. I spent my beginning life as a Christian with some doubt. And then God just continued to confirm to me. He just said, just keep reading my word, keep obeying what it says,
Sure.
and I'll show you.
You keep seeing things that confirm something you've already come to believe is true.
Yeah.
He's basically just saying there that a combination of confirmation bias and an unfalsifiable belief is your pathway to no doubt. And that's it. That's basically what he said, right?
Well, it truly shows that he is 100% on the. It's important to me that I believe this. This psychologically, he's all in.
It is a greatest hits, certainly. One of the things that was quite interesting for some reason at this moment, I wasn't sure what Anthony was thinking about when he was talking about the sands as proof of God or what he'd accept as evidence, but it is quite a common question, and it's one that I've struggled with. And the more I've thought about it, the harder it is to answer. And for what it's worth, my current answer is something. What would it take for me to believe would be that something would need to happen for which God was the only rational explanation. That would be my only possible answer.
And that's really difficult to come up with something like that. So I usually come up with the hypothetical or the example of a voice appears in the sky. Everyone confirms that the voice is telling them that the voice is God. The voice says that at 12 p.m. tomorrow, I'm going to suspend the laws of physics for an hour, and I'm going to explain to you why I didn't give you a better explanation in the first place 2,000 years ago. I really want the human race to flourish. This will be my final bit of evidence for you. I need to correct the record. Something like that would be very compelling. If at 12 p.m. the next day, the laws of physics suspended for an hour, everyone confirmed it, but I still wouldn't have 100% certainty, because how would you know it's not some superior alien race that's
or you just lost your mind,
or a simulation, or we've just lost it? Yeah, how would you know? We're fallible, so there's no way of knowing for sure. But I guess in my own little world, my confidence would increase.
One thing I liked here was the way Anthony was able to move past the evolution stuff, because Anthony never brought up evolution to begin with, but this seems to be a fundamentalist, where you either believe in God or you believe in evolution. He was kind of saddled with this belief in evolution, a kind of a straw man that then this guy was punching at the entire time. And so I like the way he kind of got past that by saying, even if we found it to be it to be false, that there's no tie there between reducing my confidence in evolution and increasing my confidence in a God. I thought that was a good moment to kind of move the conversation along.
So for me, the thing that would make me believe in what this gentleman is saying is any kind of novel testable prediction. I'll just go straight up with the T-jump route and just say any kind of novel testable prediction. So give me something that we don't know yet, make a prediction about something that we don't know yet, and then build a hypothesis because of this idea, and then let's demonstrate something that would allow me to move my confidence in that direction. Any kind of novel testable prediction in that way.
I just don't think that would even work for me, though, because all that would do is prove that somebody had found a way to predict something, not that that person or that entity was God. I mean, this is the problem with these
that's the thing.
things.
It's just something that would move the needle, not necessarily something that would make me believe. It's the thing that would move the needle for me.
Yeah,
like it would have to be just something that for God could be the only explanation, and I just can't. There is just nothing that would sit in that space for me.
It reminds me of this quote from
Sherlock Holmes. Yes,
if you eliminate all that which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. But that can get you into some trouble, like believing in whatever the Hounds of Baskerville, like you believed in some like supernatural thing in that book, and then it turned out to be different. So this is how you believe in ghosts. This is how you believe in.
Well, the fallacy there is that believing that you've eliminated that which is possible. Like you can't ever know that you've done that.
Exactly.
100 years ago, we'd have rolled out all kinds of things, right? And
it's always so baffling when people say, people who believe in science and who believe that everything can be explained by science or just assume that are so arrogant. I, however, when I see something that can't be explained, meaning that I can't explain, that therefore means that there is no scientific explanation. So, that position, I can't explain it. I can't think of any possible natural explanation for this experience. Therefore, it must be supernatural. Isn't that way more arrogant? Just because I can't find it, there can't be one.
Right. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle famously believed in fairies at the bottom of the garden.
Yeah.
Let's finish this.
True. But hold on. But you're not able to identify anything that might cause you to discover that you're mistaken on it.
Tell you what, there's one thing.
Would you agree with that?
There's one thing that would convince me that God is not true.
Okay.
That I would die and wake up and He wouldn't be there.
You'd have to wait until you die.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wake up and
there's nothing that you would. There's nothing that you would discover in the meantime while you're alive that might cause you to
not at this point.
Re-examine it?
No,
okay.
Not at this point. Anthony's been good talking.
I'd like to run it to you again.
Okay.
Seriously.
Pastor David.
Okay.
Appreciate your time. Swear words in that email address.
Yeah, maybe I'll run to you. I don't see Pastor San Antonio often or not, but
we come through here once a year when we go down to South Padre, and that's it. But it's been nice talking.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. My pleasure.
I know you don't believe
it. Okay, Anthony, if you're watching this, you're getting there. Just keep practicing. Maybe one day you'll
Don't get discouraged.
Don't get discouraged.
What a great video. Wouldn't it be awesome if Anthony emailed that guy today and set up a repeat conversation, and then we could put them side by side 6 years later? Yeah.
There's a pretty gnarly video that I saw of the same exact pastor going to a mall and telling children that Santa Claus isn't real.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then instead saying, "Oh, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because Christmas is all about Jesus," and man, it's deeply uncomfortable. I don't know if I'd be able to talk with this gentleman.
Some of the parents were ready to hit him at the end.
Oh, really?
Wow.
I couldn't sit through it all, the whole thing. It was pretty hard to watch. But really, this whole entire talk, I listened to a lot of it. I was like busy with a lot of things today, so it came on late. But really, this whole talk seemed like it came down between number 9, we should be satisfied with a test that can only confirm our claim, and number 17, we should be someone is justified in their beliefs until they're proven wrong. And that's a really dangerous combination to be stuck in a mindset about a particular thing. Almost like nothing could ever move the needle ever under any circumstances, or my standards for moving my needle in my confidence and where I'm at is beyond reach. And I admit that it's beyond reach, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's I wonder, because he kind of went really. He talked about the fact that he had studied. He had looked at all the other religions, and I think it's worth asking: how did you determine those other things weren't true? Much like how do you determine that Santa Claus isn't real? Those I think you would be worth kind of camping out on for a while.
That's the sort of claim. Sorry, Janosch, go ahead.
I think he said that he read the Bhagavad, so he knows about the other religions.
Well, he said he read the Gita, which I think was the abbreviated version. But that sort of thing is always a worrying claim, and is just as likely to come from an atheist or even potentially a sort of inexperienced street epistemologist. When somebody makes that, I've read all of the other religions, right? That's just not likely to be true. You may have watched a few YouTube videos, you may have skimmed a few guides, or you may have read what some other people have said about them. It's very unlikely this gentleman has read all of the other religious texts and then read into them to the same extent. It's just not likely.
He's Googled some shit to back up something that he already believed, which is that these things are false to begin with. So he's listened to some other apologist who's shit on him.
Yeah, that's number 19, and it's I often investigate beliefs that do not match my own, and I find that to be a blind spot for a lot of people, including maybe even myself. The more I do SE, especially the survey interview with other people, the more I see people believing that they do investigate beliefs that do not match theirs, and they're unaware of their lack of the accountability in that. Like they think that they do, and they're very confident that they've branched out and investigated all sorts of things, and
without understanding confirmation bias. They're internet researchers.
Yeah.
And SE is a great tool for that. Every time we do SE, we're investigating with people that hold different positions. We're investigating beliefs that oppose ours.
I still stand by the thing I said at the beginning. I just think that conversation demonstrates a lot of wrong things about where and how to have a conversation and with whom. It would have been a very different conversation if no cameras had been there and that guy was just sort of in a coffee shop and they were just sat and just having a frank and honest discussion. I think that would have moved into some much more dark. There would at least have been the potential for some doxastically open dialogue, but as it is, there was just no room for that in the context of that conversation.
I agree. He's definitely a person worth talking to because he's an influencer. He preaches to his congregation. Plus, he goes down to some sandpot. Talks to spring breakers. But in that context, when he was in preach mode and then he put him in front of a camera, you weren't going to make a whole lot of progress.
Just the noise from the beginning, even that set them this kind of shouting because otherwise you couldn't be heard. The kind of mood, the kind of atmosphere for the conversation, and that was bad from the get-go.
I think it's worth pointing out, by the way, just that when I'm suggesting that he's on the clock, he's performing, he's doing his job, and he's there to represent. To a certain extent, we should be suspicious of that in ourselves as well, right? Like if we're going out there to have an SE interview or we're going to try and engage somebody with a conversation, that's kind of we need to reflect on that, on whether or not we're necessarily going in with the right intentions and the right objectives into that conversation. Are we actually there for an honest conversation, or are we trying to replicate a conversation we've seen somebody else do? Are we trying to, destroy this other person? Are we trying to defeat their position? All of those things are really worth reflecting on, because I think if we can't mirror that doxastic openness honestly, I think other people can notice it, and we're less likely to be effective if we can't do that. So I think it's not just a criticism. Anthony was clearly there with his GoPros on, in a place where there was somebody who was speaking, publicly and preaching to the crowds, and clearly he wanted to engage with that person. And I think a lot of that would have set the energy levels already at the wrong levels, I'd say, for a really effective conversation.
Yeah, even though that combative style, debate style, is entertaining and it attracts people to watch it, for the long-term growth of SE, I'm of the view that we really have to stick to the modern standard, where we have the shared goal of, let's ask some friendly questions where we help you to reflect on the quality of the relationship between your confidence level and your reasons. And it's not about us. It's not about what we think. It's just a service we're providing. And it's not about what's actually true. It's about them. They judge the quality of that relationship. We don't impose our criteria of what's quality. And that's where SE will flourish long term, I think. So although I like watching these videos, that it's entertaining, I think for the long term growth of SE, we need to stick to the standards that we're setting now.
It is a kind of an important catch-22. Like, if it weren't for videos like this, I don't know if I'd have discovered SE. Like, would I ask myself the question, would I have discovered SE if it weren't for videos like this?
Yeah.
I don't know. If it was just like all casual, super non-confrontational all the time, does it get the same amount of traction and energy on the internet?
Are we saying Anthony's videos have gotten worse? Is that what we're saying?
No, we're saying Anthony
lamenting the good old days of fire and brimstone.
Entertaining in a different way.
Because maybe someone just watched a hitch slap video, and now YouTube brings up this video as a recommendation, and then they discover SE and they get into it. Yeah.
I think there is a way we can do both. We can make an entertaining video while also doing SE the right way. And it's hard. It certainly is hard. You just got to keep practicing, put yourself out there and find the right conversation partner who's genuinely interested in being very reflective. And it does sometimes just take the right conversation partner to make a good video as a content creator.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know this one was. I didn't know this one was particularly I don't know the number of views on this one, but this one still sets me more on edge. Like, to me, Reid's conversation with Dominique is one of my. I find that entertaining and endlessly entertaining because it's such a genuine conversation. And to me, that's one of the gold standard kind of conversations. I want more of those.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there's an important thing to notice. You can't make the conversation interesting if you're going in there and having an honest SE conversation, right? Like you can't turn a tricky conversation into an entertaining one, or and you really shouldn't be thinking about it in that way. Like, you've got to go at the pace of your interlocutor and things. And if it ends up being an entertaining video, that's a happy byproduct. But if that's your objective, then I think you're probably in the wrong foot.
Yeah, I think I've got my stuff here in Florida. I brought it all with me. I had it shipped part of it with the car, so maybe on Wednesday or next weekend I'll be back for another stream.
Nice. Cool.
Nice.
All right, any other questions, chat? Anything else to bring up? Any other last thoughts?
My only thing is
looking really fluffy, but sorry. What? Just Reid's hair is looking like there's a lot. It's really elevated at this point.
I have a lot of very spiritual friends here in Portland, Oregon, that like to talk about astrology and what's it called? Something consciousness, collective consciousness, and like psychic energy and things like that. And my talks are so similar to this. And that's like the note I wanted to hop on just so I can make that one point that there's such a similarity in the epistemology, and it's like you can pinpoint, it's really just about what it would take to move our needle and whether or not we have standards to do that, and trying to find the most appropriate way to put that idea into a question form and talk about other people and see how we're different. And I thought that Anthony was onto something way back in the heyday when it was like 2013 or something like that. And just got to keep on going, making videos like this, but doing it more cordially.
Yep. Yeah, I think Anthony needs to go back on the trail once in a while. It'd be nice
I really
to
hope
see
he
him.
does.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Anthony's going to watch this. So yeah, we encourage you, Anthony. We want to see it. We want to see more.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody. This is a good one.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thank you, guys.
We'll be back next week.
Thank you.
See you then.
See ya.